ornithology students. Dr. H here for your COVID-19 pandemic ornithology bird taxonomy review to help you study for your lab exam coming up next week. Hope you're all staying healthy and safe. So we're going to start from the beginning and run through every order and family in our teaching collection here. And I'm just going to make a few points about each of the groups and highlight some things to look out for. So let's start with Galloanserae, which is one of the major clades that you need to know about. And the first order is Anseriformes, which includes ducks, geese, and their relatives. And there are two orders in this Galloanserae clade. So we'll get to Galliformes in a minute, but first Anseriformes. The only family you need to worry about here is Anatidae, A-N-A-T-I-D-A-E, and I want to point out several species that we have in our collection here. So here's a female wood duck. Notice the little white crescent behind her eye there. We have a male hooded merganser, a really handsome dude with chestnut flanks and black and white stripes along the side of his breast, and a big white patch in his head. He can raise that crest if he wants to. And then we also have a taxidermy mounted female bufflehead with a nice little patch on her cheek. That's a really small duck. We also have wings from two different dabbling duck species. We have American black duck, which has a dark wing, and then it has this purple speculum in the secondaries surrounded by black. And then the mallard wing has a purplish, bluish speculum, but it's bordered by white on either end. And it's a paler gray wing overall. We have a few birds laying down here. Here's the male wood duck that goes with this female up here. Much more colorful bird with big chestnut patch on the flanks, on the shoulders, and colorful patches all over his body. We have a ringneck duck, which maybe should be called the ring-billed duck because it's got this ring on the bill and only a subtle brown ring around the neck. Female lesser scaup that has this sort of pale crescent at the base of her bill. And then we have a male blue-winged teal that has a nice teal blue colored patch on the coverts of the wing there, a white crescent on the face, and some nice spots up and down the breast and the belly down into the undertail. All right, so that is Anatidae, the ducks and geese. Moving on to the next order in the Galloanserae clade, we've got order Galliformes. Order Galliformes includes fowl, quail, and relatives. And we have two families here. We have Phasianidae, which includes the chickens, grouse, etc., and turkeys. The only specimen we have from this family is a ring-necked pheasant. We have a female here and a male here, a really beautiful bird with a long tail and really ornate plumage. This is a bird that's introduced into Mississippi, but well established in some places. And then we have northern bobwhite, which is the quail species that we have here in Mississippi. And we have two different plumages here. We have males there with white throats, and we have females there with creamy colored throats. This is family Odontophoridae. All right, moving on to the next clade. This is clade this is in the Neoaves. This is the Strysaurus clade. And now we have two orders in this Strysaurus clade. We've got Caprimulgiformes, and then we've got Apodoformes. Caprimulgiformes is the nightbirds, nightjars, or goatsuckers. We have two specimens here from this group, both in family Caprimulgidae. We've got a common nighthawk, which is a darker bird that has a big white patch on the end of the tail. And then we have a common nighthawk, which is a bit paler bird with stripes all over its belly, a smaller white patch in the tail, and then a little white patch in the wing. And then the other order is Apodoformes, which means footless. These are birds with very small feet. We don't have any chimney swifts in the collection, but we do have ruby-throated hummingbird. Adult male ruby-throated hummingbirds have a really brightly colored reddish throat or gorget. And then females and juvenile birds look more like this, with a pale whitish throat. Both of them have iridescent green on the back. All right, next is the Neo-Aves clade called columbabies. And then we're gonna look at order Columbiformes. And that order Columbiformes is represented by two different species, both in the Columbidae family. We have mourning dove, which is a creamy colored little dove with a long pointed tail. And a pretty big bird here, the rock pigeon, which we have a taxidermy mount of. It has iridescent feathering on the neck and gray on the back. And those are both in family Columbidae, order Columbiformes. So let's see, next. This is turning the page to page 4 of your handout. Also within the Neo-Aves Columbaves clade, we have another order, which is the Cuculiformes, and that should remind you of cuckoos. The Cuculiformes, this is family Cuculidae, and we have two species here. We have yellow-billed cuckoo, which is a long-tailed bird that has a yellowish bill, especially on the lower mandible in these specimens that we have, and big white patches on the tail, big white spots on the tail. That's in contrast to the black-billed cuckoo here, which has an all-dark bill for the most part, and a little bit of paleness on the lower mandible, but it's a dark bill for the most part. And then a tail that has only small white spots in it. So that's how you tell those two apart. All right, now moving on to the next clade, which is in the Neo-Aves, it's the Gruiformes clade, also order Gruiformes, and we have two families here. Family Gruidae, which is the sandhill crane, which we don't have in our collection, and then family Rallidae, which is rails, coots, and gallinules, and we've got two specimens here in this Rallidae family. American coot, shown on the right here, which has a pale bill, pale yellowish bill in these museum specimens that have faded here. And then a similar looking bird, but you can tell this bird had a red bill when it was fresh, and this is the common gallinule, both in the Rallidae family. All right, next we're gonna move on to the Equilitergnithes clade in the Neo-Aves group, and we have an order Gaviiformes that includes the loons, which we don't have in the collection, so we'll move on to order Podicipediformes, which is the grebes, and we have family Podicipedidae, which is the grebe family, and then pied-billed grebe is our one representative. This is a bird, remember, that doesn't have a tail. It's the only birds in North America that we know of that don't have any tail feathers. They have a black throat and a little marked bill, which is why they're called pied-billed, and it's a short, stout bill, and then they have webbed feet. They're partially webbed, not completely webbed like a duck split. These guys are also known for having the weird habit of eating their own feathers. The next order in the Equilitergnithes is Syconiiformes, family Syconiidae, and we have one big specimen which is representing the wood stork. This is a bird that is superficially similar to a crane or a heron, egret, etc. But in fact, it's pretty different in some ways. Look at the bill shape. It's got a long bill that's slightly down curved at the end, and it's overall white with black wingtips. And then we have order Pelicaniformes, which includes two families, the Phalacrocoracidae, which we don't have in this collection. We have family Pelicanidae, which includes brown pelican. We only have bones from the skull of brown pelican, and you can see those here. We have the skull here with the upper mandible, and then we have a humerus here, and radius and ulna. And you can see the ulna here with those, with those marks where the secondary feathers were embedded. That's kind of cool. All right, so that's brown pelican. We don't have the ibis family in the collection, but we're going to look next at family Ardeidae, which is the herons and bitterns and egrets. These are wading birds, and we have quite a few representatives here. Our biggest one is the great blue heron, shown here. It has a long bill, but it's more straight and stabby compared to the wood stork, and it's a more bluish gray bird overall. Working down in size, let's see. We also have great egret represented by this head right here, which is almost the same size as great blue heron. This is an all-white bird with a yellowish bill. A similar bird is snowy egret, which is in our, you can see here is smaller. The skull, the head is smaller and the bill is smaller. That's a mostly white bird as well, the snowy egret. We have a couple of bitterns here. This is American bittern, which has stripes on the throat that it uses for camouflage when it sticks its head straight up standing in the marsh. That's American bittern. And then we have the tiny little least bittern here, which is a nice little chestnut colored bird that also creeps around in marshes. And back to the herons, we have two taxidermy mounted green herons here, which have beautiful chestnut colored throats. They're also striped in the front, so don't get them mixed up with the more caramel colored American bittern that has this big black stripe on the side of the neck. We also in the collection have yellow-crowned night heron, which has this yellow face patch and a pale yellowish crown and some streamer feathers coming, pale yellow patch on the cheek and a yellowish crown, and some beautiful gray feathers on the back. All right, so that's it for the Ardeidae, the herons, egrets, etc. Let's move on to another order within the Equilitornithes clade, and this is the last order in that clade, the clade being all full of the water birds. This is order Charadriiformes, shorebirds, gulls, and their relatives. Family Charadriidae is the plovers, and we just have one representative. This is the bird that some people call kildee, but the technical name is killdeer. These guys have double stripes on their breast, and their bills are relatively short and tubular in shape. All right, and then family Scolopacidae, the sandpipers and snipes, we have 4 species represented in that family right here. The one taxidermy mount we have is the stilt sandpiper, which is a relatively long-legged bird with a straight bill that's slightly down-curved at the tip, and it has white in the tail. That's stilt sandpiper. We've got solitary sandpiper, which is a darker bird that has a nice black and white striped tail and a lot of spots on its very dark brown back. That's solitary sandpiper. We have Wilson's snipe. We have a whole specimen that's losing its head here. It's a stripy head and a really long straight bill. And then we have 2 more heads to go with it. What was our 4th species here? Oh yeah, American woodcock, which we don't have in the collection. Family Laridae is also in this same Charadriiformes order, but it's not in the collection. And I should clarify, you don't need to know any species for this test that are not in the collection. It's going to be all based on specimens that we have. All right, moving on to the Neo-Aves clade called Inopenaves. We have our first order, which is the Accipitriformes. This includes the hawks, eagles, vultures, and their relatives. All of these birds have a hooked raptorial bill that they use to tear apart flesh. There's the golden eagle, which we only have as a head and a giant foot. But notice the beautiful kind of gold coloration on the back of the neck of the golden eagle. That's one of the distinctive things about that bird. Our next biggest hawk or eagle or other raptor that we have is the black vulture, which is shown here. It has a naked head of grayish skin, and you can see the white wingtips in the primaries that are exposed there. Overall, it's a very dark blackish bird with gray skin on its legs also. Next, we have red-tailed hawk, where the adults actually have a bright, very chestnut-colored tail. And these are big birds, big hawks. And we have a nice taxidermy mount of that species, plus these two guys laying down. There's an adult with a chestnut tail, and then we also have an immature red-tailed hawk here with the stronger belly band. And if you turn it over and look at the tail, it's not rusty colored, it's brown with some narrow black stripes, but it's a very big bird. All right, moving on to the next largest hawk we have. We have a taxidermy mounted red-shouldered hawk, and you can see some chestnut colored feathers in the coverts on the shoulder here. And that's a distinctive thing that you'll find in this species, and including these two that are laying down here. So if you turn over this adult, you can see those chestnut colored coverts there in the wing, red-shouldered hawk. It's also a bird that has a black and white tail, but the white stripes are quite narrow, like pencil width, and much narrower than the black stripes that it has in the tail. The young bird is a little bit more difficult to tell apart from other species, and it has a brown tail with narrow white stripes. But it does have some of these telltale rusty feathers starting to come in on the shoulder area there. All right, here's another red-shouldered hawk adult with some nice obvious chestnut colored feathers in the shoulder area there. Next, I want to show you the northern harrier, which is a really long-tailed, slender bird. And one distinctive thing about the northern harrier is its white rump, which we'll briefly expose here by looking at the base of the tail. It does have some chestnut-colored feathers coming in the shoulders, so watch out and don't mix that bird up with the red-shouldered hawk. Let's look next at another Buteo, which is a really close relative of the red tail and the red-shouldered hawk. This is broad-winged hawk, which is a little bit smaller than a red shoulder and smaller than a harrier. Definitely, obviously smaller than a red-tailed hawk, but only about half the size. It's got a black and white striped tail, but the white stripes are much larger than in a red shoulder. They're almost the same width as the black stripes on a red-shouldered hawk. And then finally, I want to point out two similar species. You have, first of all, Cooper's hawk over here, which has the adults have a chestnut horizontal striping all over their breast and going down into their belly. The females are much bigger than the males in those, and also in sharp-shinned hawk, which the males of sharp-shinned hawk are really small, basically blue jay sized. And here's a big female, but this is a female that is not an adult, and you can tell because it's brown overall instead of that nice rusty barring with grayish blue on the back. All right, so those are our hawks, vultures, eagles, and that was family Accipitridae. So let's turn the page to page 6 and go into the next order that we need to look at, and that's the order Strigiformes, which is the owls. We have 4 species of owls here, divided into 2 different families. Family Strigidae, the typical owls, includes eastern screech owl. Notice the hyphen in screech owl. It's not an owl, it's a screech owl actually. And eastern screech owl is the smallest owl we have around here, and there's a gray form and a rusty form. The rusty form being a little bit more common, especially in our collection. Next up in size is the barred owl, which has 2 different orientations of barring. It's got horizontal bars on the breast and vertical bars or stripes going down the belly and legs. And then we have the biggest owl in Mississippi, which is in fact the biggest owl by weight in North America, and that's the great horned owl. We have an adult there, and then we have a nestling there showing quite a lot of down feathers and other downy type feathers. The other family of owls is the Titanidae, which has barn owl, and barn owl is a slightly smaller than the barred owl and is creamy colored with a really monkey-like face. Okay, so that is the owls. Next is order Coraciiformes. I noticed just today that this label was wrong. It said Pisciformes, but it's actually order Coraciiformes, so I corrected that. Check your notes and make sure you don't make a mistake about that. This is family Alcedinidae, and belted kingfisher is the representative we have. We have a female that is laying down here with her telltale rusty patches on the breast and belly, and we have an adult male, which is a taxidermy mount here, not showing that obvious rusty color. This is a little bit unusual where the male is the less brightly colored of the two sexes. Order Pisciformes is the woodpeckers, and this is family Piscidae. And we have a taxidermy mounted bird, which is the northern flicker. Northern flicker is a really distinctly marked bird with black spots, a black stripe across the breast, red on the back of the head, and then if you look at the shafts of, look at the feathers on the tail and the wings, they're yellow along the shaft and on the veins on both the tail and the wings. So those are northern flicker. Okay, and then we have yellow-bellied sapsucker. Adult males have red throats and red crowns, but we have some other plumages here that are a little bit duller as well, but they all have this yellowish belly, and they're kind of a dirty looking bird overall when we see them here in the winter in Mississippi. You also have red-headed woodpecker, which is a bird of big color patches, red, black, and white. The head is red, the belly is white, the back is black, and then you have big white patches in the wing and on the rump as well. And all of the woodpeckers have this sharply pointed tail, which is these stiff tail feathers that are specialized for propping them up as they hop their way up a tree. We also have red-bellied woodpecker, which has a faint little reddish patch on the belly, and otherwise is a black and white barred bird, where the females have reddish on the forehead and the nape, but not on the crown, and the adult males have a fully red crown, so watch out for that. We have pileated woodpecker, which is our biggest woodpecker in Mississippi, and this is a female because it doesn't have a red stripe on the head, on the chin area here, just the red crest. And oh yeah, and then we have our smallest woodpecker in Mississippi, which is the downy, the tiny little downy woodpecker here. Notice how small the bill is. It's about the same size as about half the head. If we had a hairy woodpecker, it would be a bigger bird with a much stouter bill that's about, well the size of the head or even longer. All right, and then bonus points if you want to add acorn woodpecker to the birds that you're trying to recognize for this test. This is a new specimen added by Cooper, and it looks like a really nice addition to the collection. It's got a white rump, reddish on the head, it's got this yellow throat, so don't mix it up with red-headed woodpecker. But that's just bonus points if you want to add that to your studying. All right, so that's the woodpeckers. Let's look next at order Falconiformes, which is the falcons, and family Falconidae. The only species we have here is American kestrel. And we have this bird here, which is an adult female. It's labeled here as an adult male, but in fact, it's a female, and you can tell that because it's all rusty. It doesn't have big patches of blue, bluish gray all over it. And the interesting thing about this bird is that it's got a raptorial bill. It's a predator. It's superficially similar to hawks and owls, but it's genetically distantly related and did not evolve those characteristics from a common ancestor. So that's why we're studying it here after the woodpeckers. All right, moving on now to the final order that you need to know, and that is order Passeriformes. But this order takes us through 4 pages. So it's a whole nother chunk, and I'm going to do that in a separate video. So see you in a minute.